Hello there guys and welcome to another video by LNERFAN4472. Now, I'm sure that introduction pretty much sums it up, because I can tell you all that there are some railway modelers that do not take proper care of their fleet, their locomotives, their carriages and everything. But there are plenty of people out there who do take proper care of them, me being one of them. Obviously, I love all of my locomotives. Now, basically, I'm Merlin here. She's done many miles in real life, many miles I'm sure, and it's come to a point where she's becoming a bit inefficient, a bit unreliable when it comes to getting moving. She's a bit jerky every now and then, and that's perfectly understandable because she needs a well-earned service. Now, a service consists of perhaps a clean of the body shell, but we won't be going through that on this particular video. We're going to be through cleaning all the mechanical, lubricating the locomotive, and if we look at it into just like a car service, this is just going to be a normal service. You know, this isn't going to be a major service or a heavy service or anything like that. We're going to be cleaning up the underframe, getting rid of all the hairs and stuff, greasing up all of our lubrication points, just to make sure everything runs nice and smoothly. That is basically what we're going to be doing in this video. Now, details about the locomotive aside, we're going to be going through the things that we will need to perform this service on Merlin. First of which being is our Peco servicing cradle. Now, every railway modeler should have one of these. It's just firm. It's nothing special. And what you do is you sit your locomotive, either put it in, well, if you really want to, you can put it in like that, although there's no point, or you can flip it upside down and you could put it that way, which is basically what it's for, so it doesn't damage all of the detailing on the locomotive. That's the whole point of it, so it doesn't snap everything off when you're not having to put the locomotive upside down on, say, a wooden surface, a floor or something like that, which can seriously damage the locomotive. Our next one is our oiling pen. You can find a lot of these around in most model shops for a really cheap price. You've got to make sure you use the right oil. There's no specific type, but just look for modelling oil and make sure it's aimed specifically at model railways. I've taken the label off this for copyright reasons, but have a good look at that. And this is an absolutely fantastic oiling pen. FYI, IC82 bought this for me, so very gratefully bought me an oiling pen. Here we have Track Magic by Deluxe Materials. I couldn't recommend this anymore. This stuff is absolutely fantastic cleaning fluid. Now you may be thinking it's for the track. Well, yeah, it is for the track, but what we're going to do is we're going to use these fine brushes here to clean all the wheels off, and among a number of other things that can get dirty and affect the running of the locomotive. We've got two of those just in case one of them wears away. So I'll bring two into the equation. Here we have a crafting knife. We're not going to be using this too much, I don't think. Basically, if you get like really hardened deposits of black rubbish on the wheels, you can just use this to scrape it away. But don't press too hard, as it can scratch the wheel. It's not a big problem, but genuinely want to avoid it really, as it can also devalue the locomotive, and it just well, it can actually help the gathering of black carbon deposits later on, so you want to be really careful. So you don't want to be like scraping it like that, you want to be kind of just trying to gently take it away like that with the side of the knife. Now this is something we're going to be using quite a bit, especially if your locomotive hasn't been cleaned in a long time. All we have here is just a pair of tweezers, and basically, these are pretty self-explanatory really. We're going to just be picking bits of hair, fluff, dog hairs, anything that could have accumulated under the chassis. This is what we'll be using to take those away, and this will take them away with ease, and there's no need to get your big chunky fingers in there to try and get those out, so that will just make that step so much easier. So this is pretty much everything we're going to need to perform the service. Now, there are going to be no nice to have features in this, because I think this is pretty much this is the bread and butter of what you need really. There's nothing else to it. So let's go ahead and dive straight into the cleaning of this locomotive. Okay, here we are. We've rearranged everything so everything's nice and easy to see. We've got our locomotive and we've got our cradle. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and get our locomotive into there. Now you want to try and grab the top of the body, and just to be more particular with an A4, just grab the skirting. It doesn't matter if the tender becomes separated, that's not a problem. And then grab the wheels. What I would recommend is grab the wheels and try and grab the skirting again, and then just put the loco like that. Now this isn't very appropriate. You can't leave the loco like this. What you've got to do is try and spread the foam out and try and slip the locomotive in there so it's nice and secure. Same goes for the tender as well. It's going to be a little bit more difficult with the tender because it's not. There we go. So our locomotive is nice and secure in there. It's not going to go anywhere really. Right, as we can see, I'm not sure if you guys can see, but we can see that this locomotive has been long overdue its service. Move the loco into shot. There we go. Now I know you can't exactly see it very well, but I can give you guys some close-ups if you like. Right, here we are now. Let's just do a little examination because this is actually my first time looking at this as well. So basically you want to be looking in all the nooks and crannies between the wheel sets and the frame, see what's in there. See if you can see any lubrication that might be required. Take a good look at the pickups. Pony truck's also a good place to look. The tender isn't that bad actually. Now the tender you'll always find isn't as bad as the front because the front obviously is the front, and this will always pick up all of the muck and rubbish before anything else does. So we can see the pony truck's done a good job of picking up all the rubbish before the main frame has, which is always good news because we want to keep it away from that. One thing to look out for is that it will accumulate around the brake blocks, not on the wheels, and that's a good thing because then it doesn't keep going round and round the wheels and get into the internal components of the locomotive. Some inevitably will, but that just happens. So first thing we want to do is we want to grab our tweezers, we want to grab those, and we want to try and take as much of the hairs out as possible. I'll try and make a pile, but I don't think we'll get enough for it to actually be visible. Once again, anyone could encounter what's going on here. You know, somebody could encounter a locomotive that's in dire need of a service, and you could come across one that doesn't need one at all. But you want to be aiming to service your locomotives when there's a noticeable decrease in performance at no expense of what kind of condition your infrastructure is. Basically what that means is if your track's dirty and everything, you can't blame the locomotive for what it's doing. Like I've just had my biggest ever track clean, and it's took up about 3 bottles of track magic to do. I've gone around everything so much to make everything run properly, and this was still struggling a little bit. So I thought to myself, right, this definitely does need a service. You also want to check around the con rods and all the link arms. Make sure you clean make sure you clean the tweezers before you go back to get some more deposits out. Because then you're just bringing it backwards and forwards, and you could be depositing it in places where you don't really want it to be. So have a look at our front pony truck. The front pony truck is quite bad. Like I say, it's the first thing it'll encounter. And in here, it's relatively hair-free, if you like. But obviously, there's dust, and that dust can be anything. It can be little specks, it can be little hairs, it can be absolutely anything. So this inevitably will happen. But having a pony truck is excellent because, well, it's integral to the locomotive, and it helps in the regard that it helps to keep things clean. For example, I'm not sure if you guys can see the pony truck. Let's try and get a close-up of that pony truck actually. Not sure if you guys can see it, but there's actually loads of black muck on the pony truck wheels, and on our main driving wheels we don't really have a lot of muck. So all the muck has been picked up by our pony truck wheels, and hopefully it's been keeping it on there, which is what we want, because that allows us to take our track magic, just dipping it in now, and just put the track magic on there. Now this is actually a really tough deposit. Sometimes it's better to take the pony truck off altogether, simply because we don't damage the side cylinder cocks. Big referral to the LNER locomotives there. One of the good things we can do is grab our crafting knife and just run the wheel around, because this is actually a really tough deposit. Really tough actually. The longer you leave it, the harder it's going to be to clean. Okay, righto. That's just about getting there. Okay, so now that pretty much all of our wheels are cleaned, I've inspected the main driving wheels and they seem to be okay. So we've got a few hairs here and there, but that's not an issue. Just make sure you've got the bulk of it off. And now we're going to proceed to lubricating all of the wheels, the crank axles, and everywhere where there's moving mechanical parts, where there's metal on metal contact, you want there to be oil there. Okay, right, the locomotive is pretty much clean now. All of the big hair deposits have been removed and the pony truck is cleaned to the best of my abilities. Now, we're going to begin with lubrication now. Here's our oiling pen and here's our red lid, I suppose, on the end of it. And that is pretty much going to go anywhere where there's metal on metal contact, e.g. between this wheel and the axle, or the axle box should I say. There as well, there as well, there as well. And here is very important, but do not put too much on. I have heard horror stories, courtesy of a few people, regarding how they put too much oil on their locomotives and it kind of leaked onto the track and caused hell, because oil is a pain to remove, an absolute pain. Enough of that, but basically where we're wanting to put it is here, 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 and anywhere where there's moving metal components. And same applies to the wheels, put some between here as well. And afterwards it's always best to run the locomotive just to work all that oil in, just to make sure that everything works properly and that it gets into the system and benefits other components as well. You may not think it happens, but it does, trust me. Okay, so here we have our oiling pen. If you have this particular oiling pen, prepare for a bit to spew out, but try and distribute it nice and evenly. We're going to start with the centre driving wheel. A lot of oil will come out and the centre crank axle can really benefit from a lot of oil. Basically anywhere where there's moving metal components. Remember, not too much. If you do put too much on, just grab a tissue and get it off. Can be quite a swift process, especially if you're experienced. Okay, so that's pretty much the whole front done. Now we're going to move on to the tender now. The tender's quite an important place. Well, I suppose not so much, but it still needs its fair share of lubrication. So let's make a start. There we go, that's the tender pretty much lubricated. And if you want your sprung movers to be working properly, I would also recommend a little bit of oil, just there, and just work it in there, just by tapping the buffer. It's just going to make sure they don't seize up and become stiff. Just work that in. Same goes for the rear buffers. And just work that in as well. If you're satisfied with that, just have a double check. I'm quite satisfied with that. I think that's a well-earned service by Merlin. Oh, we didn't do these parts in here. So put your oiling pin in there, pop a bit down, same goes for the other side. Mind the pickups while you're doing this. There we go, that's good. And the best thing to do now is run the locomotive in. Run it for half an hour in that direction and run it for half an hour in that direction, just to get that oil worked into the system, and it should be running excellently again, especially with the resistance from the hairs. I know it being a hair, it may not sound much, but it can build up. It can build up and cause a lot of resistance, and it can just stop the locomotive dead in its tracks sometimes. We've removed all of the carbon deposits from the main driving wheels, this wheel here, and the tender, especially the front pony truck. That was really difficult to do. We've greased up our buffers, both sides, greased up our wheels, greased up our conrods, and the locomotive is feeling like new. I'm sure if this locomotive had a voice, it would tell us how happy it feels right now. I'm sure it would do that. So I'll send you over a few clips of this locomotive running. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Now this video just covers lubrication and cleaning. Cleaning of the exterior of the locomotive, that will be covered in another video, so keep your eyes open for that. And I shall see you guys shortly. Yeah, have a good one, guys. See you later. Okay guys, here we are in the summer house. It's freezing cold down here. It's 5 degrees outside. It's 7 degrees, 8 at most in here. It's absolutely freezing. The locomotive is also freezing cold. All I've done is just moved her into the station, which hasn't moved at all. No stutters, no nothing. And I'm about to prove to you, if locomotives are well maintained and you get a well maintained track, you don't have to warm up your locomotives ever. It's recommended. Don't push them too hard. Treat them just like an engine. Also, I must apologise for the explosions and the fireworks in the background. I chose the perfect night to film, which is bonfire night, so I do apologise for that. So let's get the locomotive on the go and try to ignore the explosions in the background. Remember, freezing cold? Absolutely freezing cold. Bit of a brisk acceleration out the station. I think she's running late, without a doubt.